Welcome to the global launch of the IDES. I can see participants are chiming in. We're very glad today to be able to launch the third edition of the global IDES for Asia and the Pacific. Yesterday we launched the IDES for Africa, Europe and the US. So we'll start with some opening remarks from Jan van Vetter, the director of Enabel, the Belgian Development Agency, and our executive secretary at UNCDF, Preeti Sinha. The opening remarks will be followed by the release of the new data for this year of the scorecard and the introduction of the new website by our colleague François Coupienne at UNCDF. The presentation of the data will be followed by a fireside chat that I'm pretty sure you will all find very interesting, where the Honorable Dr. Luke, the Governor of the Central Bank of Solomon Island, will share his experience with the IDES, together with the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Moses, of the Ministry of Communication and Aviation in the Solomon Island. And then we'll close the event with a specific focus on bringing women at the center of digital transformation. Closing remarks that will be given by Maria Perdomo, the regional lead in Asia at UNCDF. So with that, I would like to start without any further ado. I see the room is still filling up, but let me start with the opening remarks and share with you the opening remarks of Jan van Vetter, the director of Enabel, and Preeti Sinha, the executive secretary at UNCDF. So starting with Jan van Vetter.
Thank you, Karima, and I'm very glad to be here. It's a great honor, so thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm glad to meet all of you online. I have two kinds of remarks that I would like to make. The first one is about the topic, digital transformation, inclusive digital economy. And to start with a personal anecdote, last week I had to go to a doctor appointment here in Brussels, where I am based, in a brand new hospital where everything is digitalized. And to be honest, I was very pleased to see the progress that we had here in Belgium in terms of digitalization and the gain of efficiency that we can get. But at the same time, I was a bit shocked to see that older people in the hospital could not really access to the services they needed, simply because they did not have the digital skills needed to access the services. And in a way, you did not have any person anymore, any staff to guide the people. Everything was done electronically using a QR code. And so my reflection is about to say, yes, of course, digital transformation is needed. It's a revolution. It's a huge opportunity for development. And certainly in many transition economies, it's a way to do some leapfrogging and advance their economy faster than they would normally do. So I recognize all the benefits. But at the same time, it's a risk of leaving people behind if you don't have a very clear inclusion strategy, and if you don't recognize that it's not only about digital transformation, but about the transformation of society. And so it has to involve a lot of different actors together, private sector, government, civil society, and ensuring that all those stakeholders can help in this transition. The second type of remark I would like to do is about data. And the scorecard is about to give good data for the government. In my career, I worked first in the private sector, and then I worked for civil society, and now I work for a government agency. And one of the things that shocks me in a government agency and in the world of politics is what I call the role of perception. A lot of decision-making is unfortunately done on perception. What is the perception of a cabinet head of staff, of a minister, and maybe not sufficiently on true data. And I think we as development agency, we have a role to play in making sure that we help decision makers to come with accurate data. And so in this context, this initiative the launch of this IDES data is a very good one. And that's why when I was asked to come, I was very pleased, because I believe it's a way to provide a scorecard to countries to make the right decision making and helping to make sure that their digital economy transition is done in a more inclusive way. So that's where the two reflections I wanted to share to start this discussion today. Maybe a few words about Enable. Enable, we are the Belgian Development Agency. We are working in about 20 countries in Africa, and we are a partner of UNCDF, and I'm very proud of that, and I'm very glad about this partnership, which really helps us to accompany our different partners in different countries of the world to do better. And so in this context, I'm very pleased to officially open the third edition of this global launch of IDES. And unfortunately, I'm not alone. I'm together with my friend Preeti Sinha, the Executive Director of UNCDF, and I'm very glad to give her the floor for the launch. Thank you very much, and looking forward for the discussion.
Thank you, Jean-Van Vetter, for your inspiring opening remarks. Since more than 15 years, UNCDF supported governments in embracing their digital transformation. Initially, we mainly engaged with central banks, embracing digital finance, and now in the last 5 years, with agencies involved in digital transformation, ICT, digital economy, planning authorities, to mention a few. UNCDF supports governments to make informed decisions. Our tool, the IDES, is a tool that helps them better understand the status of their digital journeys and to set the right priorities for the upcoming years. Furthermore, UNCDF supports agencies to increase their knowledge about digital transformation and support policies and regulatory changes. In the last 3 years, governments from various countries have used IDES in different ways to accelerate their digital transformation. Uganda used IDES since 2020 to set priorities, and this year, the IDES has helped them set their digital budget. Zambia leveraged IDES to draft their first national digital economy strategy, and so did the Solomon Islands and Sierra Leone. Numerous countries are using IDES to track over years the progress of their digital transformation. The tool fills a key gap in the sector: the lack of consistent, periodic, and action-oriented data to drive a successful digital transformation. All early adopters of IDES recognize that before IDES, they were blindly taking decisions about their country's digital transformation. Now, IDES helps them focus their budgets and efforts on key priorities. A unique feature of IDES is that the data collected on a yearly basis allows us to understand market changes over the years. This year's edition focuses on discussing with government partners of Uganda and the Solomon Islands the key changes that drove progress in their respective countries. With this rich information, UNCDF plays a key role in financing the growth of inclusive digital economies. For that, we use different instruments: loans to scale innovative digital economies, grants to test new business models, and loans to expand connectivity, etc. This year, our priority is to further focus on bringing women inclusiveness at the center of the discussion with our government partners. The updated methodology for the Women's Inclusiveness Score allows us to better understand the key priorities to decrease the digital divide for women. I now give the floor to my colleague, Francois Coupion, for the release of the 2021 IDES data. Thank you.
Thank you. So over to you, Francois, for the presentation of the 2021 IDES data.
Great. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. So it's a great pleasure to share on behalf of our 26 partner countries the status of the digital transformation and its inclusiveness this year. So my name is François Coupien. I'm the Global Digital Lead. And I would like to present you today some key aspects of our work last year. First, I would like to share with you some global trends about the evolution of digital transformation in the 26 countries where we are present, with also a specific focus on women inclusion this year, the status of women inclusion this year. Afterwards, I would like to give also some highlight of some new partnership that we have developed in the region in Asia Pacific. And finally, as a transition to the fireside chat discussion with the governor of the Central Bank of Solomon Islands and the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Aviation and Communication, I would like to give a highlight, some key numbers about Solomon Islands. So we can go to next slide.
Yes.
Next slide. Thank you. So as a first introduction, so some for the, maybe for the, I think the participants that are not aware of IDES. So IDES has been developed 3 years ago. It's called the Inclusive Digital Economies Scorecard. So it's a tool that has been developed with government and for government partners in the countries where we are operating. So it's a tool that helps them to measure and track the development of the digital economy and its inclusiveness, and also help set the right priorities in order to be able to lead their digital transformation journey. And so as mentioned by Jean Van Wetter, so the whole of perception he was talking about, so really the objective was to fill in this gap with the right data for government partners in 26 countries to be able to have, let's say, better data for decision making. So we can go to next slide. Karima, can we go to next slide?
Give me a second. I'm trying to change the slide, but unfortunately I'm stuck right now. Here we go. Sorry about that.
No problem. So also, so today we are releasing the data for 2021. So why do we mean 2021? It means that at the beginning of 2022, I think global data sets like ITU, like GSMA, like the World Bank have been updating the data with the data from 2021. And so we are using this data to be able to update, let's say, IDES together with national data that we are collecting with our government. So we have a new website, and so I will share with you the link to the new website, and we'll be able to deep dive for all of the different countries that we have. And so what you will see is that we can go to next slide. You will be able to see some data. I think you see on the left side of the screen, and I take the example of Bangladesh here. Some general data about what is the digital economy score, the digital inclusion score, and the women inclusion score. That's high level. But then after, you will see in the website, you can do a deep dive on, for example, the different dimensions that we have for the country, in terms of policy, regulation, infrastructures, innovation, and skills. But also you will be able to do a deep dive on information, I think, on terms of inclusiveness. So I think it's a lot of information that can help, let's say, government partners, but also I think civil society, private sectors in different countries to know more about the digital transformation in order to be able to make better decisions about the digital journey. So let me then come to some, let's say, global data, and we can go to the next slide. I would like, so what we have seen is that one of the key characteristics of IDES is that we collect the data on a yearly basis. And that's, I think, quite interesting to be able to see the evolution that we have. So if we take a summary of an aggregated data about the evolution of the digital economy globally, yes, you can go to next. So we see this year that in the 26 countries where we operate, we have seen an increase of 2% of the digital economy score. So in average, so we have an increase of 2% for the different countries. But that what is really interesting in IDES is then you can go try to see where does it come from. And so if you go next, so you can see that mainly the change of the 2% are coming from, I think, policy and regulation infrastructures, where we have, let's say, a bigger increase of 3% for policy regulation for infrastructure. We have a slighter also increase in innovation from 1%, and there is like a stability on skills. And then either we can go, let's say, one step further and try to, let's say, to try to understand, let's say, what are the main changes that appears in the different countries in this last year, in the last year. And we can go to the next slide. And we see that in terms of policy and regulation, so last year, we have seen the development and the existence of new policies and regulation in a lot of our countries. So it's mean that our government partners in different countries have really been working on drafting and publishing, let's say, new regulation and policy about a lot of different topics. It could be digital finance, could be e-money, could be customer protection, data protection, cybersecurity. So that's the first part that we have seen last year. The second part is also, we have seen this increase in terms of infrastructure. And the two main areas where I think that has been, that's where we've been the main change is in terms of connectivity. And so what do we mean by connectivity? It's more network coverage with better quality of network coverage and more access to electricity with better access to electricity. And so we have seen this increased connectivity in a lot of different countries. And then also the second, I think, really key area where we have seen an increase last year, I think overall in different countries, is about the ownership of technology. So mainly the usage of internet and the ownership of mobile phone and SIM cards. So it just gives you a snapshot of about, let's say, last year, this year data, and really I think the evolution. And you will be able to see much more data when you are deep diving in the new IDES website, but it's really to give you a snapshot. The second snapshot is the next slide. It's about women inclusion. So last year, we have been working with 15 organizations in order really to try to find, let's say, the much more accuracy, precision in order to be able to focus on the inclusion of women in digital transformation. And so in the 26 countries where we operate, what we see for the moment is that the level of inclusion of women in the digital economy is about 63%. So there's still a major gap of 37%. And what IDES help us to see is where are the big gaps coming? Where are the big gaps that we see in the digital transformation process? And so you see that there is major gap in terms of policy regulation, there is major gaps in innovation, and there is also a large gap in terms of infrastructure and skills. And again, we can do the same process if we go to next slide, to next year, to see where does it come from. And for example, if we take policy and regulation, what we observe in this year in the 26 countries, so we see that there is a major gap in terms of share of women participating in parliament. That I think 1 country out of 2 is using sex disaggregated data for decision making. That only maybe half of the country have target for women inclusion in strategies like national financial inclusion and national digital economy strategy. On infrastructure, we see major gap in terms of ICT usage and ownership. So ownership of a phone or usage of internet, for example. Then in innovation, one of the key gaps coming from business ownership, women-led, let's say, business are really way behind, let's say, men-led businesses. And also that we see, let's say, a major gap in terms of digital literacy. Again, I think when you see the data, I think can really help you to try seeing, okay, where should I put the emphasis? What are the main gaps that I would like to fill? And so you will be able to find, let's say, this data also for the different countries when you will be able to go on the website. So we can go on the next slide, please. So now I would like to come with some partnership that we have developed, let's say, this last year. So first of all, concerning the methodology. So the way we are working, and I really would like to highlight that, our objective is we're not developing a global index. It's really a tool that is done for our partners country with our partners countries. And so that's why I think here we collect, I think, the feedback from our different partner countries in order to see how we can improve the tool on a yearly basis. And so together with a reference group of some key partners that you see on the screen, we are able to collect this data and then to be able to process it and to see, let's say, what are the key changes we'll bring to IDES to provide additional value. But this year, I would like really to mention that we have 2 new partners, academic partners, that will be joining the exercise. And so we have the Griffith Asia Institute from Griffith University and the University of Zurich that will be joining this process of updating IDES. So I think that's a great, let's say, additional partners to really continuously, let's say, improve, let's say, the work that we are doing. And then if we go to next slide, beyond just, let's say, the tool itself, I think major request that we had from government partners is also to be able to be more equipped with information, with case studies about what's going on of digital transformation in different countries, to be able to take better decisions. And so we have really, I think, the chance to have this partnership with the Griffith Asia Institute of Griffith University. And I think they are funded by the Foundation for Development Cooperation. And what they've developed is a series for the moment of 16 case studies from Asia and the Pacific. And so what is really interesting is that these case studies, it's a 1-page case study, really well structured, that will provide government partners, private sector, so civil society, the opportunity to discover what's going on in different countries. And they also organize according to the same framework of IDES. I think you can really make the link between your priorities and some case studies that you would like to discover. And so you will see there is I think, the link to their website. And so really our objective is really to be able to continue, I think, as we go, to have such a partnership, to reinforce, let's say, the availability of case study, and to become a knowledge base also for the different aspects of IDES about, let's say, what's happening in the world. So it's really peer learning that we would like from our government partners, so that when they come back at home in their country, they can really decide about what is the best solution and to make the best decision for the digital transformation. So we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So now, in order to do the transition with, I think, the fireside chat of Solomon Island, let's do, I think, a deep dive on Solomon Island. So Solomon Islands, I think I really would like to thank our government partners in the country, has been one of the first country adopting IDES. And so what we see from, I think, the evolution that we see in this year is that you see the digital economy has been growing from 39% to 42%, the inclusion from 50 to 54%, and we see a women inclusion score of 76%. So mainly, I think the main driver about this evolution are coming in the country from policy and regulation. And so I think we'll have much more information from the fireside chat about this, and also about skills. And so there's been a stability, infrastructure, and innovation in the country. So again, if we go to next slide, you will be able to see on our website, let's say, more deep dive about, let's say, this different dimension and get more insight about digital transformation in Solomon Island. So in order to end, I think, my presentation, I just would like to give you the link to the website. That the website is the same link as last year, but I think we have really updated the information to really give you, let's say, a better experience and to be able really now to see the evolution that we have between years. So thank you very much for this presentation, and I'm really looking forward for the fireside chat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, François. Thank you very much, François, for this introduction. And now it's the time for the fireside chat. So I'm really, really pleased to welcome Tina Jabin, founding president of Bangladesh and Women's Investor Network. Thank you, Tina. I realize I omitted to mention you at the start. Sorry about this omission. So Tina will really help us today with the fireside chat, and she has 2 honorable guests with her. She has the governor, Dr. Luke from the Central Bank of Solomon Islands, who will switch on his camera in a few seconds. And he will be accompanied for this fireside chat on the Solomon Island by the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Communication and Aviation, Mr. Moses, who will also come into the camera in a few seconds. And so with that, I would like to give the floor to Tina Jabin so that she can walk us through the experience of the Solomon Island with our guests. And
Thank you
maybe
so much, Karima.
Sorry, while we wait for Permanent Secretary to be able to switch on his camera, I'm just going to remind our participants that please do use the chat function or the Q&A function, preferably the Q&A function, to bring your question forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karima. It's a pleasure to host this fireside chat with our very distinguished guests from the Solomon Islands. So we have two speakers for the fireside chat, and just wanted to go over very quickly about the format. So we'll have 3 questions, and the first question will be for our Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Aviation and Telecommunication, Mr. Moses Virivolomo. And then the second question is going to be for both of our guests, Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Luke Farao, and Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Aviation and Telecommunication, Mr. Moses. And then the last question will be for the Governor. We would be able to have a few minutes for Q&A. So with that, if we can just dive into our session. So we would like to hear Solomon Islands' insight in implementing, IDES. So with that, the question that that we have for Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Aviation and Telecommunication, Mr. Moses, is we'd like to get some insights about Solomon Islands' experience. Why did the Solomon Island actually adopted IDES, and how is IDES used by government agencies to drive Solomon Islands' digital transformation? The floor is to Mr. Moses Virivolomo. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator, and a very good morning from Montreal, Canada. Unfortunately, my camera is not turned on. It says that the host has stopped it, so maybe Sam can undo that for the camera. But otherwise, thank you very much for this opportunity to be able to answer or give some insights to the question that was just asked. I think Solomon Islands, before IDES, we don't have the tools to be able to carry out our strengths and weaknesses analysis to see which areas that we are below par or doing well or not doing so well and doing okay. So that IDES is basically a tool where the government and other agencies within the Solomon Islands were able to really know the basis or the stage we are at in terms of digital transformation. So the IDES was able to point to us the areas that we needed to put our efforts. So it's basically in the terms of policy, regulatory issues, and infrastructure, which was highlighted in the opening statement. So in terms of the ministry, which is our basic policy, is access and connectivity, well supported by government. And currently, we are working on the National Digital Transformation Authority, which has already passed through cabinet, and that will be set up soon to oversee the transformation in each sector or on overall what the government is trying to do. So we are basically looking at the last mile, and you would know that Solomon Islands is made up of islands. So we have logistical nightmares to connect the people, but the bulk of the people are living out in the rural areas. So in terms of getting women and other genders involved, it requires us to address the last mile. So if we look at the provinces. It's where the government is trying to encourage our telecommunication companies to expand the network. But the government is also coming in currently getting finance to build 156 towers. This will assist the two telecom companies to expand into the rural areas. The government will be obtaining finance to finance this, set up a company to own the towers, and the two telecommunication companies that we have will rent the towers. So that allows them to quickly reach the last mile, and it will always help in the second part of the questions that the governor will be answering, because by getting the infrastructure available, then we can get more people involved, and the transformation can be realized not only in the urban centers, but right into the rural areas. So I think IDES, just to summarize, IDES has given us the necessary areas, and it is a tool for the government to use for the benefit of its people. So I think that will be my question, my answer.
Thank you very much, Permanent Secretary. Sorry about the camera issues. Maybe you can try again. Oh, here we can see you now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moses Virivolomo. I think that, one thing to point is that government is the enabler for digital transformation and inclusiveness, but, we also bring in the private stakeholders so that, we can reach that last mile clients. Thank you for your insightful comments. We are going to move on to our second question. And the question is, with Inclusive Digital Economies Scorecard, IDES, it has increased a number of areas in, the score has increased in a number of areas in Solomon Islands, especially on the policy and regulatory side. And our question is, what did IDES initiate from a regulatory and policy side? And as a result, what is currently happening in the country? I would like to request the Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Liu Forao, to respond first, and then the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Moses Virivolomo, to respond second. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dina, for that question. Yeah, I think as mentioned by the PS Moses, the IDES has provided a platform for the country where our digital transformation strategy or direction can be geared towards. Now, in terms of what has happened in recent times or in recently that has engendered this digital transformation to pick up quicker or improve from the previous IDES scorecard. One of the areas that we saw that this has supported is the enactment of the national payment system that which Parliament passed recently, a couple of months back. That payment system is very important for the country as it modernizes our payment system in the country and to become very efficient, effective, and of course timely. So it is very, very important, and that piece of legislation has been gazetted already, and the regulations to go along with the act are underway in terms of the drafting, and shortly it should be gazetted for implementation. But so we are looking at the national payment system to come on live by Q1 of next year, 2023. That's a big push from our side, from the central bank. We are very keen to have this payment system up and running very soon. Of course, we were a bit late in terms of the schedule due to this COVID-19, but we are determined to get this thing up and running. The other thing, of course, that we did that improve, I guess, our IDES score is the implementation of the regulatory sandbox, which the central bank also we put out in place. That sandbox is basically where we invite any new fintech company that wants to establish in the country that has a solution for the country, where they can test their product, and it's a controlled environment, so they can make mistake, they can do it back, and after it's been proven that it can be rolled out, then we allow them to roll out in the country. Of course, with minimal regulation. We don't want to be seen as a hindrance to this digital transformation journey, as we all wanted to see our economy moving forward. Of course, there are risks, as mentioned earlier by our earlier speakers, but those risks can be mitigated in some ways. And of course, there's also this new e-money regulations coming online. We're just waiting for the minister's approval. It's currently with the IDES chamber for vetting before that can be forwarded for the minister's approval. So that's basically what from our side, from the central bank, that we see that contributed to the improvement in the score from the previous year. I'll stop here, Tina, and I guess PS Moses will add on from the policy side. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Hear from PS Moses. Thank you.
Thank you, my moderator. I'll continue on from where the governor has left. In terms of policy, like I said earlier, IDES has been assisting us to point to areas that we need to address. So the ministry has been driving ICT development and national broadcasting policy that was launched in 2017. And with that two policies, we are able to progress the developments in ICT and national broadcasting. In terms of what we are talking about today, we've also amended the Act, the Telecommunications Act, which now enables us to register SIMs in Solomon Islands. It has been commenced. It was commenced early this month. So the telecos and the regulator are working on the launching it in Honiara and then later on into the provinces. The other sectors also and doing their own thing, but now we are trying to sort of harness them together. So we also have the ICT for education and health master plans, Ministry of Health master plans. This will sort of lead to e-education and e-health. We've just had a workshop on national e-commerce strategy, which is now awaiting a cabinet on my return. We also in the process of setting up the Digital Transformation Authority. It has already passed through cabinet. That said, when we open up or when we engage in the digital areas, we are also mindful of what people which will be using the internet. So the ministry has already come up with a cybersecurity policy, and it will go into cabinet before the end of the year. We are currently in the drafting instruction stage with the cybercrime bill. We also have set up and recruited people for our computer emergency response team. We are also doing other things while waiting for e-commerce to come in. We are already on one stage in doing our national addressing system and also the national postcode. So with IDES, I think we've been able to progress these areas further because also our donor partners, including UNCDF, UNDP, and other donors that are active in the sector, they have been assisting us to drive us forward. So on overall, I think the increases in the percentage, as we already seen earlier, I think it's related to the action side, which is a regulatory side, and also the policy side. And I've just mentioned the infrastructure side, although we are not delivering infrastructure, but we are trying to enable the implementation of constructing more telecommunication towers. So to us, that will also further progress, as I've mentioned earlier, that the last mile is so important for us. If you consider the last mile, it is where all the women are. It's all where the youth are attending education, but unable to do to access the internet. So by moving forward in the infrastructure side, by moving forward in the regulatory side, and by moving forward in the policy side, I think maybe those are some of the reasons why we see an increase in the percentage that was highlighted earlier. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, PS Mr. Moses. I think that, you know what, it shows that the policies are cross-ministerial, cross-agencies, and these are very, very critical policies, which is going to actually drive the transformations and form the foundations of many of these digital inclusive transformations. So this is a perfect time to kind of transition to my next question and the last question to the Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Liu Forao. With all these regulatory initiatives that you have taken, you know, of course, the citizens of Solomon Islands, their lives have been positively changed. And we would like to hear some of the key examples in the digital economy area that drive inclusion of rural population, women and youth in the Solomon Islands. Some of the key examples, if you can share with us. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Tina. Let me start off by saying that our national financial inclusion, the third strategy, which runs from 2021 to 2025, it aims at having more people having access and use any financial services or products. Now, as mentioned by PS in his earlier remarks, that majority of our population who lives in the island, they are in the rural areas. And that includes mostly women and youth in that, who lives in the area. Now, if we are to achieve our NFIS 3, then it means that we have addressed what we wanted to address. Now, given the absence of the traditional banks in the Solomons in rural areas, nowadays most banks are going digital. Having a physical branch in rural areas like in the Solomons is very expensive to operate in. Now, one of the areas or one of the pillars of the NFIS 3 or the third national financial inclusion strategy is to reach out to this segment of the society, that is women, youth, and those less fortunate segment through digital means. Now, which means that one of our goals in the NFIS 3 is the digital financial services, which is one of our key priorities. Now, some of the areas that we are currently focusing on from the central bank in terms of financial inclusion is that we are promoting savings clubs, mostly for women. And in fact, most of this, 90% of these saving clubs, They are ran and operated by women in the rural areas, and most of these women are mostly low income and less educated. They've gone into this modality is just because of its convenience and it's very low cost. Now, another saving scheme for the informal sector to have savings in our only superannuation fund, which is the Solomon Islands National Provident Fund. It was created in 2017, and it's called the USAVE pension scheme. Now that saving schemes is geared towards mainly for the informal sector. Now that they can open, it's a voluntary scheme. Anyone can open an account with the SINPF. Now, the innovative part of this scheme, I suppose, is that it allows the users or the account holders to use their mobile airtime as savings. So in other words, your mobile credit, it's a currency. Now, the good thing about it is that we've been able, this of course came through with the support of UNCDF and all accolade to UNCDF support in this area. So we managed to temporarily waive the tax that is imposed on this airtime credit for the mobile. So whatever you send to your savings account and the NPF, it's totally your savings. So if you send $10, it's a $10 savings for you, and plus a 10% on top of the tax. Now that scheme has been, as far as I know, that or I'm aware that I think it's the first of its kind in terms of savings. I know that some other places they use the airtime for payments of bills and all that stuff. So, and it's also interesting to note that of this scheme, 53% of the portfolio are held by women, and these are women from rural areas, mainly those market vendors. I think it's a very positive story to tell. The other thing, another example that I wish to also highlight here is that we also have a national women financial inclusion policy in place, and this was done in collaboration with the Alliance for Financial Inclusion, or AFI in short. Now, this policy, basically, we have a document. I think it's in the website. This document is in our website, but the policy basically envisions to build an inclusive and sustainable financial system, which is responsive to the needs of the women in Solomon Islands that are very diverse. And the key policy areas that this women financial inclusion policy looks at is, one is to increase access to and sustainable use of financial services. Second policy area is the financial literacy and consumer protection. Thirdly, it formalizes the savings clubs. Now remember, the savings club are mainly informal sector, and they are, in the Solomons, we regard them as informal financial services. And the last one is, of course, with all these things, we need to be informed of whether the policy has actually worked. So we need to collect the data on that one. So we have the fourth policy area to focus on is to disaggregate the data into sex. So we have a sex disaggregated data on that one. And that's basically what the policy is looking at the moment. And we are determined to implement this policy. And I think we were also one of the first countries to reflect the women policy in our financial inclusion strategy. That is not to boast about it, because we still, there's still a long way to go. Thirdly, I think one of the areas that we're also looking at, and this is working along with UNCDF, is the mobile banking, of course. Currently, UNCDF, and as we are working with one of the telcos to establish a mobile banking in the space. And of course, there are also promote of usage of social media. So again, with the UNCDF support, we are looking at having an aggregator platform where MSMEs, mostly women and youth, they can bring together their products and try to sell them on social media and those kind of platforms.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we are running out of time.
Okay.
It's been very interesting to hear the description of the different measures you were able to take and the changes. And thank you so much, Tina, for this.
In fact, that's my last point.
Yeah, and then I will go to a question that's come from within the chats to PS Moses, so that we close with a last question from the audience, maybe before the closing remarks, because we're going to be running out of time. But please, your last point, and then I will go to the question.
Thank you. So you heard from us. I think it's a collaboration between regulatory policy and government's initiative in providing the conducive environment, as we've been speaking about. Government not actually doing what the private sector should be doing, but enabling them to do more. And also our telecommunication companies have described the building of 156 towers. So we cannot, Solomon Islands cannot do this alone. So we thank UNCDF, UNCTAD, UNDP, Australia, and ITU too, for making it happen. We are a small country, an LDC country, but these initiatives, while we are trying to be inclusive, it will also help our achievement of our sustainable development goals, which is a main driver for the national government. So I think just to close it, because we are running out of time, I can talk for hours. So collaboration between donor partners, the government, within the government, and then you have regulators. I think maybe that's why you see the increases that we've just seen. So we'd like to thank everybody too for allowing us to present, myself and the governor. And I think we will end it there, but thank you very much for the opportunity to allow myself and the governor to tell a bit of stories about Solomon Islands. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Tina, Jabin. It was really great to have you to facilitate this discussion. Honorable Governor, Dr. Luke, really a pleasure to hear from you, and PS Moses, really inspiring talk, and it's really great to see how things are moving forward for Solomon Islands. We are getting questions, but we're kind of running out of time, so I propose that we will collect the questions and get back to the participants who have been asking questions. Like, I see a question in the chat for Tanzania, or I see a question about expanding the IDES. Yes, there is always a plan to expand, and we gradually are getting there, but François would speak better than me about what the plans are. But right now I would like to give the floor to Maria Perdomo, and thank again our honorable guests for the panel discussion, and give the floor to Maria Perdomo, who will close this session for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karima. Thank you, Karima, and colleagues online and fellow panelists. So, advancing gender equality in the Asia-Pacific region could add as much as $4.5 trillion per year to the region's GDP. And so this number gives you an idea of the importance of investing in a digital economy that is inclusive of all, but in particular of women. And that is why UNCDF this year, with other partners and major organizations like UN Women, UNDP, the World Bank, GSMA, the EU, Paris 21, SIGAP, ITU, UNDESA, made a deep dive this year in the methodology of IDES to improve the accuracy of the Women Inclusiveness Score. Proxies have been used to measure the results of the actions taken by government and private sector to include women in the digital economy. It covers dimensions of the policy, infrastructure, innovations, and skills, as you saw during Francois' presentation. During his presentation, we also were able to get an average of the problem, right? So the average inclusion of women in the digital economy in the 22 countries where IDES has been implemented so far is at 63%, with major gaps in particular around participation of women in government. For example, women in parliament is at 43%. Usage of sex disaggregated data by the government, which is at 54%. I am very glad to hear from our colleagues from Solomon Islands that that is something that is being addressed. Specific targets on women inclusion in national strategies. Again, very nice to see that is going on. 3 weeks ago, so I'm losing track of the time, I was in Bangladesh, where that was also one of the key targets of Bangladesh Bank. ICT usage and ownership, which is still by women at 55%. The gender ratio in business ownership is at 33%, and the financing gap of those businesses is even bigger. The gender ratio in social media is at 51%. And so, for example, if we're trying to bring women-owned MSMEs to sell their products through these social media platforms or take advantage of e-commerce platforms, then we have a lot of things to do here. Now, it is crucial to focus on energy on filling this gender divide gap. And some key actions that I was able to craft during the presentation are the following. First of all, I would like to invite business to be gender responsive and to design and deliver women-centric solutions that are powered by innovation and digital technology. These services, for example, must take into consideration social norms that prevent women from accessing the services, but also, or for example, their relatively lower financial and digital capabilities in comparison to men. Your businesses also should be all strengthen the gender dimension in your human resources strategies, making sure that more women work in your business operations, etc. Last week, I was in Nepal, where I was very happy to learn that one of our partners, Astodil, an e-commerce platform, is actually addressing some entry barriers for women to use the platform, which relates to the registration of the business. In addition to that, in their policies, they have that if you're a woman, you can take 1 day off of paid leave during your period, which is very supportive of women. Second, inviting the public sector, the government, to work closely with the private sector and build together an enabling environment and policy environment to drive women's inclusion in the digital economy. In addition to that, I invite the public sector to work closely with the private sector to forge meaningful partnerships. I was very glad to learn about the partnership that Solomon Islands is doing, with the government is doing with those that are building those towers in the last mile from the private sector. UNCDF and its partners stand ready to support the public and the private sector with the right type of advisory services, technical assistance, and the right type of finance to build a digital economy that is inclusive for women. Let's build meaningful partnerships to crowd in public and private finance from international and domestic sources to develop an inclusive digital economy, one that works with women and for women. Let's join forces to use the IDES data to build an inclusive digital economy with the main goal of speeding up the pace at which finance, in particular, the kind of finance that works for women, is being mobilized for SDG achievement. I would like to thank everybody that was present today during this webinar, in particular the panelists and all the governments that in Asia and the Pacific have also undertaken IDES this year. And let's together join forces to work on what IDES is telling us that we should work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Maria. And with that, I propose that we close this webinar session. Thank you again for attending. We'll be sharing the recording as a result of this session. And you will also be able to access the recording from the call we had yesterday and where we discussed the experience from Uganda. So you can hear both from Solomon Island and Uganda. Thank you very much again. And with that, I wish you all a good rest of the day or start of the day, depending on where you are. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.